What if the very thing making you fail right now is your desperate rush to succeed? Look around. The world is obsessed with immediate results. Instagram success stories, overnight cryptocurrency millionaires, 20-something tech founders. The message is clear. If you haven't made it by 25, you're falling behind. Every day you wait feels like another day losing ground to people younger, faster, and hungrier than you. But what if this entire narrative is a trap? A carefully constructed illusion designed to make you squander your greatest advantage. Here's the cold, hard truth that nobody wants to tell you. 95% of your competition is destroying their potential by optimizing for speed rather than magnitude. They're sprinting in completely the wrong direction while congratulating themselves on how fast they're moving. Many people discover this the hard way. After years chasing quick wins and growth hacks, they find themselves exactly where they started, except now with less time, less energy, and watching others who seem to be moving at half their pace, somehow lapping them financially, physically, and socially. This insight comes from studying the counterintuitive patterns of history's greatest achievers, from investors to empire builders, revealing something shocking that directly contradicts everything you're being told about success. There exists a paradox so powerful that understanding it creates an almost unfair advantage in any competitive field. This is the strategic patience paradox, and once grasped, it transforms how anyone looks at success, time, and competition. But be warned, what follows will be uncomfortable. It challenges core beliefs about progress that have been programmed into most people since childhood. Many will want to reject it because it exposes how much time and energy they've potentially wasted. How can waiting longer make someone richer while everyone else falls behind? Why do the most successful people often appear to be making the least progress initially? And most importantly, what hidden mechanism creates exponential returns for those who master strategic patience while punishing everyone else? The answers lie in understanding a principle that dates back centuries but has become nearly forgotten in our hyper-accelerated world. It's the same principle that allowed certain historical figures to dominate their eras while their impatient rivals have been forgotten by history. What follows is exactly how this works, why it matters more today than ever before, and how anyone can immediately begin applying it to create compound advantages in every area of life. To truly understand the strategic patience paradox, we need to examine the work of a man whose ideas fundamentally shaped how we understand growth, advantage, and time, yet whose most important insight remains hidden in plain sight. Albert Einstein once called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He said, "He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it." But Einstein's observation goes far deeper than most realize. What he was pointing to wasn't just a financial principle. It was a universal law that governs nearly every form of success. When most people think of compound interest, they imagine money sitting in an account, growing slowly. But the truly powerful application isn't in banking. It's in applying this principle to your skills, relationships, knowledge, and opportunities. This is where strategic patience creates its magic. Consider this. If you improve at something just 1% per day, after 1 year, you're not 365% better. You're 37.8 times better. This is the math that the impatient miss, and it's the same pattern that creates both spectacular success and devastating failure. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man and one of history's greatest investors, built his entire philosophy around this concept. What did Munger understand that his contemporaries missed? While others frantically jumped between investment strategies seeking quick returns, Munger and Buffett patiently waited for the right opportunities, often doing nothing for years, a strategy that seemed maddeningly passive to outside observers. Their competitors mocked this approach, until Munger and Buffett became two of the wealthiest people on the planet, while those same critics flamed out. But here's what's fascinating. Munger didn't just apply this to investing. He created what he called a lattice work of mental models, patiently building knowledge across disciplines that compounded over decades. While specialists rushed to capitalize on narrow expertise, Munger's broad knowledge created unique insights others couldn't see. The first rule of compounding, Munger said, is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. This is where the paradox emerges. What looks like waiting is actually accelerating, if you understand what's happening beneath the surface. The ancient Romans had a proverb that captures this perfectly. Festina lente, make haste slowly. Emperor Augustus adopted this as his personal motto, and under his patient, deliberate leadership, Rome entered its greatest period of stability and expansion. Yet this wisdom has been almost completely abandoned in our current era, where we're bombarded with messages promising fast tracks and shortcuts to success. What these promises miss is the fundamental mathematical reality. Compounding creates exponential curves that start deceptively slowly and then suddenly explode upward. The early stages, where strategic patience matters most, look completely unimpressive to outside observers. This is why the masses fail. They quit during the flat early part of the exponential curve, just before the trajectory would have gone vertical. But there's something even more insidious happening. When you chase immediate results, you're not just failing to compound your advantages, you're actively creating compound disadvantages. Each time you restart, switch focus, or abandon a path before reaching the inflection point, you reset to zero and forfeit all potential future returns. This creates a devastating opportunity cost invisible to those trapped in the immediacy bias. While they're resetting repeatedly, the strategically patient person continues advancing along the exponential curve, eventually reaching a point where each additional unit of effort creates exponentially larger returns. But this still doesn't fully explain why strategic patience creates such a powerful advantage in today's world. To understand that, we need to examine a critical psychological principle that's making this advantage even more pronounced in the digital age. Let's go deeper and examine exactly why strategic patience creates such a powerful competitive advantage, particularly in today's hyperactive world. The foundation of this advantage comes from understanding three interconnected forces: exponential returns, psychological arbitrage, and competitive positioning. Master these, and you'll unlock compound advantages, while your peers remain trapped in the cycle of diminishing returns. The human mind evolved to understand linear relationships, not exponential ones. When I throw a rock, I can intuitively calculate where it will land. But when it comes to predicting exponential growth, our brains fundamentally malfunction. This cognitive blind spot creates enormous opportunity. Consider two approaches. Person A improves something by 1% daily, while person B goes for quick 10% improvements, but then plateaus for weeks, searching for the next quick win. After 1 month, they appear nearly identical in results. After 6 months, person A has started pulling ahead. After 3 years, the difference is so vast, it appears they're playing entirely different games. Why? Because person B is thinking linearly, while person A is leveraging exponentials. Let me show you this principle in action across multiple domains. In knowledge acquisition, the average person reads a book, applies a few ideas immediately, then moves on, extracting perhaps 10% of its value. They read 30 books this way and have 30 disconnected ideas. The strategically patient person reads the same book, but then integrates its core ideas with previous knowledge, revisits it after gaining new context, and connects it with other domains. They might read only 10 books, but extract 90% of their value, and, most importantly, create unique connections between ideas that generate original insights. This is why some of the world's most successful people often read fewer books, but reread them multiple times. They're not optimizing for breadth, but for integration and application depth. In skill development, the rushed person jumps between skills, getting good enough at many things, but mastering none. They learn programming for 3 months, then graphic design, then marketing, constantly restarting the compound curve. Meanwhile, the strategically patient person focuses on one meta skill for years, pushing through plateaus while others quit. This creates 2 advantages. First, they reach mastery levels that command exponentially higher compensation. Second, they develop the meta skill of mastering skills, allowing them to learn subsequent skills far more efficiently. In business and career, the impatient person job hops for immediate salary increases, constantly resetting their institutional knowledge, network depth, and position. They optimize for next quarter's gains. The patient strategist might stay in a seemingly slower growing position, but builds deep domain expertise, internal political capital, and a reputation that eventually creates opportunities inaccessible to others. Consider Sam Walton, who spent years running a single small-town store, patiently refining his retail model, while competitors rushed to expand. When he finally began growing Walmart, he had built an operational advantage so significant that he could outcompete anyone. The strategic patience in the early years created the foundation for explosive growth later. But here's where it gets really interesting, and where we start to understand the true power of the paradox. While exponential returns create mathematical advantage, psychological arbitrage creates contextual advantage by leveraging the predictable impatience of others. In any competitive field, the majority of participants optimize for quick results, creating consistent patterns you can exploit through strategic patience. Let me show you how this works across different contexts. In markets and investing, when markets crash, the masses panic sell at the worst time. The patient investor who prepared for this moment can acquire assets at tremendous discounts. This isn't just about buying low. It's about structuring your entire strategy around the predictable psychological weaknesses of other market participants. Howard Marks, one of history's greatest investors, built his fortune by patiently waiting for moments of maximum panic, then acting decisively when others couldn't see clearly. The greatest opportunities come not from trying to guess what will happen, he wrote, but from positioning yourself to benefit from the psychology of others. In career selection, when new fields emerge, they typically follow a predictable pattern. Initial hype, mass rush of entrants, disappointment phase, abandonment by the impatient, then sustainable growth for those who remained. Cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, each has experienced this cycle. The masses flood in during peak hype, then abandon ship when immediate riches don't materialize. The patient strategist enters with clear eyes, builds through the disappointment phase, and positions for the sustainable growth period when competition has thinned. In skill markets, when everyone rushes to learn the newest programming language or marketing tactic, they create a temporary oversupply that depresses value. The strategically patient person often focuses on skills with persistent demand but limited appeal due to their difficulty or less exciting nature. While thousands compete for positions in overcrowded specialties, the patient strategist builds expertise in areas with stable, long-term demand. This is why unsexy specializations often yield the greatest financial returns. This psychological arbitrage extends to virtually every domain where humans compete. By understanding the predictable impatience patterns of others, you can position yourself to benefit from their psychological limitations. The final force multiplying the power of strategic patience is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all. Deliberately delaying action often creates vastly superior positioning. Consider a simple example. 2 people want to start businesses. Person A launches immediately, with whatever resources they currently have. Person B spends a year working for someone else in the industry, learning the business model, understanding customer psychology, and saving capital. Person A gets a head start, but faces every problem without preparation. Person B starts later, but with insider knowledge, established relationships, and sufficient capital. Within 18 months, Person B has typically surpassed Person A despite the late start. This pattern repeats across domains. In content creation, the impatient creator publishes whatever they can produce immediately, building in public from day one. The strategically patient creator spends months developing their skills, understanding their niche, and creating a backlog of quality work before launching. This positioning asymmetry explains why some new YouTube channels seem to come out of nowhere with polished content that rapidly gains traction, while thousands of others struggle for years with minimal growth. In negotiations, the impatient negotiator rushes to close deals, revealing their eagerness and compromising position. The patient negotiator demonstrates comfort with walking away, creating immediate leverage. Legendary negotiator Robert Mnookin calls this leveraging your BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement. By patiently developing alternatives, you transform the fundamental dynamics of any negotiation. In network building, the impatient networker collects superficial connections, optimizing for quantity. The patient relationship builder focuses on genuine value creation with fewer, more significant relationships. As Keith Ferrazzi explains in Never Eat Alone, the most valuable connections don't come from networking events. They develop through shared experiences and consistent value delivery over time. This patient approach creates relationships that actually deliver opportunities rather than just increasing your connection count. But the most powerful application of strategic patience may be in timing market entry and exit points. In opportunity timing, the impatient jump at every opportunity, diluting their resources across too many pursuits. The strategically patient wait for the rare convergence of preparation and opportunity that Naval Ravikant calls specific knowledge meeting specific timing. Jeff Bezos exemplified this when he methodically evaluated multiple business ideas before starting Amazon, choosing books as his entry point, not because he was passionate about publishing, but because books offered the optimal positioning for his long-term vision of building the everything store. This deliberate delay in choosing his focus allowed Bezos to select a vastly superior starting position, which ultimately created trillion-dollar advantages. The true power of strategic patience emerges when you integrate all three forces. You build exponential returns through consistent compound improvements. You leverage psychological arbitrage by exploiting the predictable impatience of others. You create superior competitive positioning through strategic delay and preparation. When these three forces align, you create what I call positional leverage, a state where each unit of your effort generates multiples more impact than the same unit from competitors. But this still leaves us with critical questions. How exactly do you implement strategic patience in a world designed to destroy it? What specific domains offer the greatest returns on patience today? And how do you avoid the trap of patience becoming mere procrastination? To answer these questions, we need to examine the psychological barriers that make strategic patience so difficult and the practical framework for overcoming them. Right now, pause and honestly ask yourself a painful question. How many potentially life-changing projects, skills, or opportunities have you abandoned because they didn't yield immediate results? Be brutally honest. Think about that programming language you started learning, but quit after 2 weeks. The workout routine you abandoned after a month. The side business you gave up on when it didn't immediately take off. Each of these represents a compound curve you reset to zero. Each represents a future alternative reality, a version of you that could have existed, that you were raised because you couldn't tolerate the deceptive early phase of exponential growth. This isn't about making you feel regret. It's about confronting the invisible pattern that keeps repeating in your life. The pattern that will continue indefinitely unless you consciously interrupt it. This pattern is remarkably common. Many people start and abandon multiple businesses before they have any chance to succeed. They job hop, constantly seeking faster advancement, resetting their institutional leverage each time. They begin countless skills, but master none. They stay constantly busy, constantly hustling, and yet make virtually no progress toward actual wealth or freedom. The painful truth is that most people today are trapped in the same pattern, constantly starting over, constantly resetting their compound curves to zero, constantly misjudging the timeline required for meaningful success. And it's not entirely their fault. Today's environment is meticulously engineered to destroy the capacity for strategic patience. Every aspect of modern technology and media is designed to rewire the brain for immediate gratification. Social media platforms use variable reward mechanisms, the same psychology that makes slot machines addictive, to train brains to crave constant novelty. Content algorithms learn to serve progressively more stimulating material, raising the threshold for engagement. The modern workplace incentivizes visible activity over invisible progress, rewarding those who look busy rather than those building long-term value. Success media focuses on overnight victories while concealing the years of invisible preparation that preceded them. This environment has created what psychologists call hyperbolic discounting, an excessive preference for smaller rewards now over larger rewards later. The human brain has been systematically rewired to make decisions against long-term interests. But here's the opportunity hidden within this challenge. As strategic patience becomes increasingly rare, it becomes increasingly valuable. The harder it is for people to delay gratification, the greater the rewards for those who can. Consider this for a moment. The very forces making strategic patience difficult are simultaneously increasing its potential returns. This is why the wealth gap continues expanding, not just because of policy or privilege, but because compound advantages accumulate to those rare individuals who can consistently delay gratification while everyone else chases immediate returns. Here's a direct question worth answering honestly. Are you currently optimizing your life for this month's progress, or for where you'll be 5 years from now? Because the brutal truth is that most of the activities keeping you busy right now are actually preventing you from building genuine wealth and freedom. That extra hour of social media isn't neutral. It's actively rewiring your brain against long-term thinking. Those quick productivity hacks aren't helping. They're distracting you from the deeper work that actually moves the needle. The constant consumption of success stories isn't motivating you. It's creating unrealistic timeline expectations that cause you to abandon promising paths prematurely. You need to understand that strategic patience isn't just one success approach among many. In a world of exponential returns, it's the fundamental dividing line between those who build wealth and those who remain stuck. But this confrontation with reality creates an immediate question. How do you actually develop strategic patience in practice? What concrete system separates genuine strategic patience from mere procrastination or wishful thinking? Because here's the critical distinction many miss. Strategic patience is not passive waiting. It's not about doing nothing and hoping time will magically transform your situation. Strategic patience is intensely active beneath the surface. It's about methodically building the foundation that will support explosive future growth, while everyone else chases visible, but ultimately meaningless short-term wins. This distinction is crucial because it exposes a dangerous trap. People often swing between frantic activity with no strategic direction and passive waiting with no underlying preparation. Both are fatal to long-term success. To implement true strategic patience, you need a framework that accurately distinguishes between genuine compound opportunities and dead-end pursuits, maintains consistent progress during the invisible early phase of exponential growth, protects your psychology against the constant assault of immediate gratification cues, creates accurate feedback mechanisms when visible progress metrics are absent. Without this framework, you'll inevitably fall back into the impatience trap that's claimed so many promising futures. The question now becomes, how exactly do you build this system? What specific practices separate those who successfully leverage strategic patience from those who repeatedly fail? To answer this, we need to examine the core psychological barriers that destroy strategic patience and the proven methods for systematically overcoming them. Research and analysis of successful individuals has revealed a practical framework for implementing strategic patience in any domain: the compound advantage system. This system has three core components that work together to overcome the psychological barriers previously discussed and create genuine compound advantages. The first step in mastering strategic patience is deliberately recalibrating your timeline expectations. Most people unconsciously absorb timeline expectations from media, peers, and misleading success stories. This creates perpetual disappointment when reality doesn't match these distorted expectations. The solution is explicit timeline recalibration through the 10x rule. Whatever timeline you initially expect for meaningful results, immediately multiply it by 10. If you think a new skill will take 3 months to develop, mentally prepare for 30 months. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic realism that aligns your expectations with how exponential growth actually works. When you set accurate timelines, you stop abandoning promising paths prematurely. Milestone mapping. Break your path into explicit phases with clear expectations for each. Foundation phase, typically 6 to 12 months. Expect no external validation or visible progress. Competence phase, typically 1 to 2 years. Expect moderate progress, visible primarily to yourself. Leverage phase, typically 2 to 5 years. Expect accelerating returns as compound advantages begin manifesting. Exponential phase, typically 5+ years. Expect dramatic returns that appear lucky to outside observers. By explicitly mapping these phases in advance, you create psychological immunity to the doubt that inevitably arises during the early, invisible phases of compound growth. The second component addresses a critical challenge. How do you validate you're making genuine progress when visible metrics are absent? This requires developing what I call progress authentication, reliable methods to verify growth during periods when external validation is unavailable. Process adherence tracking. Rather than measuring outcomes, which follow non-linear patterns, track adherence to proven processes. Don't measure how much your business has grown this month. Measure how consistently you've executed the fundamental activities that eventually create growth. Skill-based feedback loops. Identify the core sub-skills required for your ultimate objective, then create tight feedback loops for these components. Instead of focusing solely on arbitrary metrics like followers or income, measure specific capability improvements that underlie long-term success. Cognitive complexity analysis. Regularly assess how your understanding of your domain has evolved by documenting the questions you're asking. As expertise develops, your questions become increasingly sophisticated. This progression provides concrete evidence of growth, even when external metrics haven't moved. These authentication methods create something essential for strategic patience: confident continuation during periods of apparent stagnation. The final component addresses the reality that willpower alone is insufficient for sustaining strategic patience in an environment designed to destroy it. This requires systematically reconstructing your information environment: input, curation, Deliberately eliminate sources that distort timeline expectations or promote the illusion of overnight success. Replace them with sources that normalize the actual timelines of meaningful achievement. Progress anchoring. Create environmental triggers that consistently reconnect you with the exponential nature of compound advantage. This might include regular review of long-term vision documents or visualization practices that strengthen your connection to your future self. Community insulation. Selectively build relationships with others who understand compound thinking while limiting exposure to those who might inadvertently undermine your patience through short-term thinking. When these three components, timeline recalibration, progress authentication, and environment reconstruction, work together, they create a psychological infrastructure that makes strategic patience not just possible, but sustainable. This system doesn't just help you persist longer on your current path. It fundamentally transforms how you select which opportunities to pursue in the first place, orienting you toward genuine compound opportunities that others overlook because of their deceptively unrewarding early phases. The result is that you begin consistently choosing paths with exponential rather than linear returns, the foundational decision that separates those who build genuine wealth from those who remain trapped in the cycle of work and consumption. If you've truly understood the power of strategic patience, comment below with "compound over speed" to demonstrate your grasp of this critical distinction. Those who recognize this fundamental truth about success have already separated themselves from those who will never understand it. But understanding these principles is just the beginning. The question now becomes, how does one specifically apply strategic patience to the key wealth-building domains of our time? And how can this approach be maintained when everything in our culture pushes against it? Here's the reality most people will never accept. The greatest opportunities of our time aren't accessible through conventional timelines or traditional thinking. While the masses chase quick results and wonder why they remain stuck, a small minority is quietly building exponential advantage through strategic patience. This pattern repeats throughout history. During the California gold rush, most miners went broke, while merchants who patiently built infrastructure became wealthy. During the dot-com boom, most day traders lost everything, while patient investors who recognized the long-term transformation created generational wealth. Today, we're witnessing perhaps the greatest wealth transfer in human history, but not primarily between economic classes, as many believe. The real transfer is happening between the impatient majority and the strategically patient minority who understand the mathematics of compound advantage. Every day, people make a fundamental choice that determines which side of this transfer they end up on. Will they continue optimizing for this month's results while wondering why real success remains elusive? Or will they begin building the compound advantages that initially appear to be making no difference, but eventually create unstoppable momentum? This isn't just about financial success. Strategic patience transforms every domain, from relationships to health to knowledge, by aligning actions with the actual mathematics of how advantage compounds over time. This is just the beginning. Future explorations will break down exactly how to apply the strategic patience framework to specific high-leverage domains, including the 3 specific skills with the highest patience premium in today's economy, how to identify compound opportunities others miss because of timeline illusions, the psychological techniques that strengthen one's ability to delay gratification while others can't, the proven system for transforming one's relationship with time and results. Each of these topics deserves its own dedicated exploration, because mastering strategic patience isn't a one-time decision. It's an ongoing practice that goes against nearly everything our culture teaches about success. For those ready to join the minority who understand this fundamental truth, who are willing to play the long game while others chase quick wins, subscribing now is the logical next step. This channel isn't for those seeking overnight transformation or get-rich-quick formulas. It's for those rare individuals who understand that the most valuable things in life follow exponential rather than linear patterns, and who are willing to align their actions accordingly. The strategically patient are quietly building the future while everyone else is distracted by the present. The choice is clear. Subscribe now and take the first step toward mastering the most powerful success principle that most will never understand. The next video will go even deeper into the mechanics of compound advantage in the modern economy.